Hey, hello there, and welcome back to Brothers of the Arcana. Wow, that was like a weird hello, like, hey, hello there, everybody. This is Alex Aldea.
Howdy ho! This is Dave Ferrigno.
And together we are the Wonder Twins, or whatever we are.
So we are Brothers of the Arcana, and we're back for part 2 of episode 11. Getting to know your hosts.
Get to know your hosts. Dave interviewed me, and he said I was very wordy, so I went like an hour and a half. So Dave's going to go, maybe a strong 20, 25 minutes with his answers.
I'll go one-word answers only.
That's right. He's the Calvin Coolidge of podcast hosts. Who got that? Nobody. All right. Well, David, we're going to try to work from a similar bank of questions as what you asked me. And try to speak in complete sentences. We try to string your words together in a way that makes it easy for people, not like I did, where I just run off at the mouth. So, what inspired you to start a podcast, and why did you choose the name Brothers of the Arcana?
Great question, Alex. I appreciate that very much. Just first of all, yes, absolutely. I would say, despite some of our podcast episodes, I actually do talk quite a bit in real life. On the episodes, clearly, we typically have our guest speaking, and we have another co-host that likes to get a little verbose. So asking that question, so Alex and I were having cigars, which he alluded to, and we have these very in-depth conversations constantly. Some of them are just completely off the rails. Some of them are absolutely wonderful, but we like to talk about some very deep and esoteric topics. We like to talk about life issues, as, close friends normally do. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners out there that probably engage in the same types of conversations. So, we were just sitting there having cigars, and we just said, we should really start a podcast and talk about these topics. And at that point, we then started trying to come up with the concept, come up with names. For whatever reason, I don't really remember the amalgamation of how that actually happened, but we've said, hey, maybe we could be, we're exploring the arcana, the arcane. So it became this whole topic of, well, arcane kind of describes something mysterious, right, and secretive. Arcana refers to the actual secrets, mysteries, hidden knowledge, so to speak. So you had the noun or the adjective, right? So I just said, Brothers of the... So I just said Brothers of the Arcana sounded better than Brothers of the Arcane. It was just... And Alex, being Alex, was just like, sure, why not? Let's go with it. So that's really how it came to fruition.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a good story. Good story, Hansel. Good story, Hansel.
Absolutely.
So right now, Hansel. Okay.
What is this? A school for ants?
That's right. Sorry. It has to be at least okay. No more Zoolander entrances. What do you enjoy when you're not recording or working on this podcast?
So outside of this podcast, I'm very active with obviously Freemasonry, being the Worshipful Master currently. I also, I'm engaged with a variety of other organizations as well. And some of my hobbies, like I just love the outdoors. So, whether it's ATVing in the, colder months or going jet skiing in the summertime, enjoying cigars, hanging out with friends. I genuinely enjoy hiking and just being outside in nature. I am a Virgo. As an earth sign, I kind of like to, ground myself and get near water or mountains and nature. So that's important to me. And as we all know, we're kind of limited on time, but love hanging out with friends, enjoying different cuisines and new experiences. Love to travel, even though I don't get to do much of that at this point. But hopefully in the near future, we'll be traveling a lot for the show.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm just curious how, well, so I know we've had many cuisines together, all kinds of stuff. We should start a new podcast on eating, called, I don't know, what do you call it? Two fat guys and what they eat. No, actually, because you're not really that fat guy anymore because you go to the gym 5 times a day now, which is
yes, trying to anyway.
You're working on yourself. What's a what do you think would be like a movie or a book that really speaks to you, that really kind of has either affected you at one point in your life or has set your life's sort of philosophy on, how you run, how you do what you do?
Fair enough. So there's so many great books, movies, music, whatever influences out there. This one might be a little off the cuff and a little strange to individuals, but I would actually say Mario Puzo's The Godfather, and I'll explain why. So growing up, my father always said, be like Michael, not Sonny. So for those who have read the book, seen the movie, I'm sure, it's certainly a classic. Sonny obviously was hot-headed. He always didn't keep his emotions in check, and ultimately, no spoilers here, but ultimately got him killed in the movie. So my father always said to me growing up, he's like, be like Michael, where you're calm, collected, you keep your cool, you just stay, kind of level-headed and stay focused, and no matter what's happening and no matter what the circumstances are, just try to not let that affect you at all. And just keep that calm, cool, collected, kind of killer instinct in a sense, but not that I'm have a killer instinct, but I just mean just being completely calm in whatever emergency situations or anything else. So, I've applied that in all aspects of my life as the best that I can, whether it's at workplace, personal relationships, whatever else. I think those that know me know that I usually have a pretty calming effect on individuals, and I think that's really something that I kind of adapted early on, and that's really stuck with me and been important to me. And I'm not going to say, am I perfect? No, of course not. It's like, obviously, I might get mad or have my moments where I might be upset with somebody or whatever else, but I felt that's actually a very key and integral part of my life.
What why do you think no one ever says be like Fredo?
Well, you can't go against the family, so
Yes, absolutely. That is true.
How about some Alfredo?
Well, Alfredo's delicious. I think we can all agree on that. Did you ever see that episode that was it Bruno, or it was one of the Sacha Baron Cohen characters, and he's interviewing a guy from the PLO or Hamas, and he's interviewing an Israeli, and he's saying something like, "What's the deal with hummus? What's everyone's problem with hummus?" He meant to say Hamas, but he said hummus instead, and they're like, "Nothing. Hummus is delicious." He goes, "Yeah, I also think hummus is wonderful." He goes, "We're making progress. It's a great thing." So, okay. Anyway, that was a long time ago, and I'm
excellent.
Middle East currently that are not fun at all. So we want to be cognizant of that while still being,
unfortunately.
Okay. So Mario Puzo's The Godfather, that's a great movie, as well as a book.
Fantastic book
I don't
as
know.
well.
There's a book and they start talking about the shooting scene where, and they said this one thing is just like specks and gobbets of brain matter flew onto the white shirt of the petrified waiter after the shooting scene in the restaurant with Sollozzo. And that stuck with me. That's just a very visceral visual thing to think about. But anyway, I love that book.
You know,
Okay.
Honestly, one of my favorite movie scenes of all time, and it might sound kind of wrong in some ways, but the christening. You know, the baptism right at the end, where they're taking out all the other bosses, and basically, you know, it's like, do you denounce Satan? Do you, you know, and it's like you got this evil act being carried out, and it's like everybody's just meeting their demise while they're sitting there doing this baptism. So, yeah, definitely a classic movie scene. But
yeah, that's a tough one. What did they do? They got Barzini. He rolled down the stairs in the air. They got Mo Green on the massage table. They got Strachey in the door, the revolving door.
yeah,
I don't know. I don't remember the rest of them. If there was any other, there's like four other bosses, right? I don't know what they do.
Yeah, there was a couple families. I don't remember offhand, but anyway, it's kind of irrelevant to our podcast.
It is. What is your understanding of truth over time? In other words, is truth are you a relativist? Are you a what's the opposite of relativist? Not objectivist, because that's like where the Ayn Rand thing. Do you feel that truth is relative or not?
So regarding truth, I think, especially in today's world, it's always important to question, you know, what's true and what's not. I think we've lost out in society today. And I think that's one thing with the podcast that we really tried to bring forth is not necessarily telling everybody, you know, is this the truth or not, but giving a platform and an outlet for people to at least ask those questions, seek that knowledge. So, you know, my understanding of truth over time has, I think, changed. You know, whether it was religion or whatever else. Like, I grew up Roman Catholic. I've always been, you know, I would consider myself spiritual versus religious at this point. But, you know, there's a lot of doctrine and indoctrination out there and the dogma of, you know, religions that I kind of question. It's like, is this really what we're supposed to be doing? Is this actually the truth? Or is it more allegory? Is it all, you know, symbolism or whatever else? And we had some great discussions with Hogan and other individuals, you know, on the podcast, and we'll continue to explore those in the future. So,
and by Hogan, you mean Tim Hogan, Timothy Hogan,
yes,
the Grandmaster of a Templar lineage, and all-around good guy that we've had on the podcast. He was very kind to come on the show. We had a lot of fun with him. But yeah, so is there I mean, you mentioned being Roman Catholic. Is there a specific spiritual practice that you employ currently, or some sort of a ritual that you hold sacred? How does that, you mentioned being a Virgo and going to water. You find that grounding? And yes. How does your spirituality and religion play into that?
So I'm an empath. So as an empath, I find it a necessity almost daily to cleanse my energy. So part of my practices, I would say, you know, outside of praying, I implement prayer every morning, every evening, and if I have the time throughout the day, you know, I think gratitude's important, humility is important. So, you know, I'll light incense. I'll use, you know, I try to use different modalities. So I'll use incense. I'll use, you know, sometimes holy water. You know, it really depends on the circumstances, what's going on. If I go into like a really crowded place, as an example, and, you know, I'm out with thousands of individuals, like say I'm commuting to the office in New York or Jersey City or somewhere, a lot of times when I come home, I'll try to at least cleanse myself through, using Palo Santo, sage. I might also shower and just kind of wash away the world for that day. I also find it extremely important to meditate, just clearing the mind and trying to get rid of the thoughts from that day and just allowing the stress to get out of your body, because it really isn't conducive for anybody's health or anything to constantly be stressed out or worried. And, you sleep a lot better at night when you're not worried about anything. And obviously there's a lot of things going on in the world, but through meditation and mindfulness, you can really quiet the mind and not have those thoughts. And, I'm sure we've all laid in bed one night or many nights just thinking about, the stress of the world. And can you fall asleep right away? Of course not. It'll keep you up at night, right? So,
Percent.
and when I can, and it's difficult, unfortunately, I don't get to do it as much as I'd like to, but it's really, for me, important to go out and, take off your shoes, go barefoot in the grass, or go stand in sand, or go stand in the ocean or a lake, or stand on rocks. What I like to also do is when I go hiking, as an example, a lot of times I'll find a place like next to a little pond or a lake or whatever else. I'll actually take off my hiking boots, take off my shoes, and just stand there barefoot for a few minutes, and then sit down, do a couple mindfulness, like breathing exercises, and just take in nature and relax and try to take in that silence, because I feel like that just completely grounds me and allows me to relax and, think clearly and connect with higher spirit guides and, whatever people's modalities are. So, to me, that's extremely important. And I know we've had discussions. Being an empath, I feel other people's energy. So a lot of times I might need to actually ground myself and clear out that energy. And it took me a while to figure out how to actually push away people's energy, especially if you're around somebody that's negative or around somebody that has anxiety or depression or whatever else. It's certainly something you have to guard yourself against.
You inspired me while you were talking. I started burning some incense and some essential essences, angelic vision.
Nice.
So that looks pretty cool. It smells great. So, and I know several Masons that we're friends with like to burn incense as well, because it can be very focusing or very relaxing. There's a lot of great stuff that incense can do for you.
Yeah, and actually, there's other ways. If you're not into incense or you can't stand the scents or whatever else, you could obviously use crystals. There's also other methods, like even when you go take a shower, if you want to take a bath, you can use essential oils, Epsom salt, things of that nature that'll help you. So,
a lot of cleansing. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Obviously, check with your doctor first, and whatever, or your spiritual practitioner. We are not empowered to offer you any sort of health advice on that front. We're just two idiots on a podcast. So, yes. Okay. Well, honestly, I appreciate your answers and what you're saying a lot. And one of the reasons why we're friends is there's many reasons why we're friends, but one of the main ones is how authentic you are and how much of a guy of integrity you are. And for my own purposes, I like to stick with people that I can respect on that level. And you have my full respect for giving life your best shot. How do you stay authentic and true to your spiritual values? We're running a platform here, right? So, there's a pull to want to be everything to everybody. You want to be a pleaser because you want people to watch your show and you want to grow your audience, and you don't want people saying bad things or trolling you or other things like that. So how do you run that gauntlet between, you got to put out a message that makes sense, that you feel comfortable with and you align with, but you also want to be growing popularity, right? So it's there's a thing there.
As we know, you're never going to be 100% loved by everybody. But I think the whole thing about staying authentic and true to yourself, I think all too often nowadays, people try to compare themselves to, you go on social media, especially, and you see, there's all these millionaires and billionaires or wannabes, whatever they are. I mean, you could be anything you want to be on the internet, right? Obviously you could kind of, especially nowadays with AI, it's like God only knows what else people are putting out there. But I think the biggest thing is staying true to yourself, and you have to look at it from a perspective. And I always try to do that. I'm just a person in the world. To me, if I could positively influence somebody that day, or just put positivity and, just good vibes out to the universe, in a sense, it's like, people could be having a crappy day. If you say hello to a total stranger, or you hold the door for somebody, or whatever else, I mean, I feel like, is chivalry dead? Maybe, but I don't think it is for us individuals that are still trying to be gentlemen in the world. And quite frankly, I really feel like just practicing humility, understanding, we're just another person. We all have our time, talent, or treasures, right? It's like everybody offers something unique and different. So I try to always look at things from a perspective. I'm not better or worse than anybody. Some people might have better talents. Some people might be more gifted in certain areas than others. But, when you go out there every day, instead of having a negative attitude and being like, my life sucks, everything sucks, it doesn't matter what life throws at you. Just keep a positive attitude. And that's what I always try to do. It's like, no matter what's happening, no matter what's going on, I just try to sit there and kind of smile and take the best of it. And, one thing and one approach I always try to use is that if you're in a crappy situation, or things are going on in your life that you don't really like, I like to try to, at least, and this is extremely difficult, so don't get me wrong, but I try to look at things from the 10,000 foot view. So what I try to do is take a step back and say, all right, well, why am I here? What got me here? And obviously things happen. It's like, you might get into a circumstance or situation that you didn't choose and you didn't want to, but as I always look at it, God didn't give you, this challenge or test without the knowledge that you can handle it. So
Right.
You got to look for the positives in everything. And, whether that's, hey, I've been working out for weeks and it's like I lost the pound. It's like some people might be frustrated at that, but it's just like, hey, maybe you gained muscle. Maybe you actually did lose fat and you're not seeing the results yet, but you will. So you just got to stick to it and kind of have that can-do attitude. And, I think for me, it's just important to always be humble. I'm not a person that likes to get compliments, honestly. It's like it almost makes me feel uncomfortable because I know it's something I should be grateful for, but it's also, one of those things where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm just a regular guy, in this world with billions of people. And God only knows, we might be an atom for all we know, in a bigger, you watch Men in Black, you might be that necklace. So you never know, right? Orion's belt.
Oh, I know what you mean. Where the galaxy's contained within.
Yeah, right on the cat's collar. Exactly.
The old Light of Zartha.
Yep.
Yes. Well, that's pretty cool. If you could have, let's go for a fun one. If you could have one cigar for the rest of your life, what would that cigar be and why?
So that would be a tough one to answer. If I had the ability to time travel, which I do not at the moment, but maybe we'll find that one day, I would say the Monte Cristo #2, the Cubans, from several years back, because they used to just be so consistent and smooth. They were just like a silky smooth smoke, but great flavor, medium to full body. And it was just a delightful cigar. At this point, since I don't have the ability to time travel, I would say it would be a toss-up between the Jaime Garcia and and I would say the Padron 1964. The Padron's probably the most consistent stick, just from the perspective of their quality control and everything.
Sure.
So, that would probably be my go-to. Just, an absolute fantastic stick. I mean, there's so many great cigars, and as you know, we indulge in a lot of cigars, and we're not encouraging anybody to smoke or anything else, but it's just our relaxation method. And we have a lot of friends and individuals that we like to sit down and have cigars with, and just have great conversations and great camaraderie, and it brings our friendship together. So, yeah, it's just one of those things.
That is very true. That is very
quite frankly, I wish I could resurrect it, but I used to have what we called Tobacco Thursdays. So every Thursday, every one of my close friends, we used to meet up for cigars after work, no matter what. So whether that was in New York, whether it was in Jersey City, whether it was over here at, Casa de Monte Cristo, which used to be JR, we'd always consistently go, and we made every effort to make sure we all met up. And, I'd love to implement something like that again. But with everybody's schedule, people get married, have kids, whatever else, it's like it just makes it extremely difficult. And plus with masonry and other organizations, you don't always have that luxury.
What's your favorite food?
Favorite food? Well, I am a foodie. I didn't grow to this size. What's that?
Don't say whatever's closest. Actually,
no, definitely not whatever's closest. I mean, like, I'm partial to Italian food. So that would be my favorite cuisine. And even though it's not Italian per se, because you can't get it in Italy, I love chicken parm with pasta. That would probably be my go-to meal.
We'll probably have it tonight. Very cool. That meeting.
Yes, more than likely.
Arm as far as the eye can see, my friend.
Yes, the last, for our listeners, the last meeting we went to, and we're not going to name names, but we love them, and he ordered parm, and parm. So, if you were lactose intolerant, you were definitely hurting the next morning. Yeah.
You were out of luck if you're
with that being said,
my friends.
But I love all cuisines. I mean, whether sushi is one of my favorites. I also love, Mexican food. I love, I'll eat Thai, Indian. It really, as long as it's delicious food, like French food as well. I mean, I'm not going to discriminate against great food. So, who doesn't love a great steak and bourbon too, or a cigar over steak? Yeah, but I would say I'm partial, being Italian, I'm partial to Italian food, obviously. So.
Now, there not really being any good Italian restaurants in our area here. I mean, it's hard to come up with some decent Italian food. No, I'm kidding. We're like in the mecca of Italian and American food.
Right, and quite frankly, my favorite Italian restaurant, and I'll give them a quick plug, is Laco's in Jersey City, 67 Ferrigno Avenue. My father started going there in the 70s when he worked at Western Electric down in Kearney, and I started going there when I was like 2 or 3 years old, to my recollection. I'm sure my parents probably brought me there prior to that, but I've been eating their chicken parm and pasta for 40 years practically, and having a tartufo for dessert, fried calamari for an appetizer, and their homemade bread. And they used to get the bread from Dom's as well, that they made just their standard bread. But I know that bakery went out of business in Hoboken, so not exactly sure, but there are definitely fantastic restaurants in the area here in New Jersey and New York metropolitan area. You can't beat it, really, other than going to Italy and actually having real food.
Well, you've seen it here, kids. If you want to grow up big and strong, get a steady diet of Italian food, and you could be just like Dave.
Exactly.
When you grow up. So if you, yes, there's genetics have nothing to do with it. It's all about the Italian food. Well,
of course,
you have an interesting distinction, family-wise. You have an uncle who has had some modicum of success in the weightlifting slash TV slash movie space, which is of course Lou Ferrigno. And Lou is a gentleman that I met once or twice. What's it like to grow up with a famous uncle?
Well, so he's actually a cousin, so not an uncle, but
Both my
honestly, there was zero benefit to me on that front. I've gotten that a million times. Like even when I took my driver's test years ago, I had the gentleman that was doing my test sounded like Ben Stein, and he was just like, Ferrigno. Any relation to the Hulk? Like, yeah. So, I mean, I've earned the nickname the Hulk and, some various other nicknames. That's probably actually a fun fact. But I've been getting that my entire life, and essentially, everybody pronounces our name incorrectly because that's not the Italian pronunciation, but it's certainly cool and unique, but it's also like, what's that?
Is it Ferrigno? How do you pronounce it? Is it Igor rather than Igor? No, never mind. No Young Frankenstein reference.
No, it's Ferrigno, but it's, it's just one of these things where it's like, the G would be silent in Italian, but so I'd actually be Davide Carmine Ferrigno.
Take it easy.
Exactly. Yep. Good times.
It is good times.
Yeah.
Listen, I've got a 5-letter last name, and everybody always mispronounces it anyway, so it's okay. I definitely understand. What
Well, that was to make up for your first name, right? Alexandru.
Well, yes, I guess so. I guess so. What's your bucket list places to travel? I know you've traveled quite a bit. You've been Europe. You ever been to Asia? You ever been to Africa?
I've been to Japan. Japan was absolutely fantastic. So I'd love to go to Thailand, Cambodia. I'd love to travel to, go Easter Island. I'd love to go to Machu Picchu. I'd like to go to Patagonia. Definitely would love to. Granted, I'm sure I couldn't get to explore the way I'd want to, but I'd love to go to Antarctica too. Go see what's actually down there. But
now we're getting into some serious stuff there, David.
Yes, but I've had the pleasure of traveling quite a bit. Some of my favorite places I've been, like honestly, was Italy. Is near and dear to me. But on my bucket list, I'd definitely like to go to Croatia, Greece. I'd love to go back to Japan actually at some point as well. Probably Singapore, Abu Dhabi. Some other fun spots, but and we'll see what the future holds. And I also really, I spent some time in Poland at one point. That was actually one of the most relaxing and enjoyable trips, surprisingly. Wow. And I know obviously you're from Romania, so you have some roots over there. But England was always fun to go to. Like people in London they were always fantastic. It's just buying your Yankee a drink or 5 or 16 in my case, but they just kept pouring drink after drink, and we were chugging drinks, and I kind of make friends wherever I go. It seems like that I'm the guy that total strangers talk to and tell me their life story for no apparent reason. So I think it's just maybe the energy that's emanated or whatever else, but whatever happens. So yeah, those would certainly be on my immediate bucket list, and maybe someday. Maybe we could hit up Elon and go back to the moon and see what's out there, because, we've kind of questioned why we never went back.
That's a very good question. And it's a question that our friend Eric Matson raised from our first podcast as to people ask maybe the wrong question there. It's not, did we ever go to the moon, but why are we going back? Or, why is there... Now we got a second moon, which is apparently the size of a school bus or something like that. That's like circulating around our moon, which is interesting.
Correct.
So,
yep, it's growing tentacles. No.
so what?
Yeah.
Here's the question: if you go back in history and meet one person, who would it be and why?
So if I can go back in history and meet one person, I would say, you kind of took my answer. Jesus would probably be number one. But I'm going to go outside of the box here a little bit since you already answered with Jesus. I would say maybe Cleopatra.
That's what I said last week.
That's a true story. But I would say Cleopatra, just because it would be really fascinating to go back in time and see ancient Egypt, see the correlation with Rome and Julius Caesar and just, the entire empire as a whole. I'd love to see the library at Alexandria and just really kind of delve into that time frame and get some of that ancient wisdom and knowledge. Another person, I think there'd be others like Tesla, Nikola Tesla would be amazing to meet. Just, I'm sure, a wealth of knowledge and truly an interesting person, or even somebody like Leonardo da Vinci. Just with, the experiments, the different types of inventions he came up with, the philosophy, and it would be really cool to see, I think the Renaissance in Florence in that time frame. So, yeah, let's just go with Cleopatra as number one.
Cleopatra. I mean, I'm sure she was very beautiful as well as very, she was a queen, right? So somebody who knew how to run a country or could run a country. She knew her way around men and how to get her way in a time when women didn't have the overt sort of rights that they do today. So they had to make their way through life a little bit differently than maybe is the case. So that's an interesting thing. Yeah. That's a good one. And Roman history is so cool, right? So, it's...
Oh, yeah. It's absolutely. And, I think maybe being Roman Catholic, I'm not supposed to apparently think reincarnation exists or whatever else, but I believe it does. And I feel like one of my past lives, I was definitely in Rome. Because when I go to Rome, I just feel like I'm at home. Like it feels so, just like that feeling that you're where you're supposed to be and belonging. Like I just connect to the country so much when I go there. So I feel like I must have had ties. Like obviously ancestrally, yes, but I'm just saying I also feel like my soul was there at some point. And doing past life regressions at one point, I actually supposedly was a Roman gladiator, so who knows?
Really? Interesting. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. So would you have that lemon pizza that they make in Naples with the smoked mozzarella cheese on it? That sounds pretty good.
Oh my God, that pizza is amazing.
Really? You've had it? I haven't had it. I'd love to try it.
Yeah, I was back in 2019. I was last in Naples and Sorrento, the Amalfi Coast, and I had the pleasure of trying it. It is absolutely amazing.
I'll bet. I wonder if we could make it here. Maybe get one of these pizzerias around here and do it for us.
The thing is, the lemons there are so much different than here. So you just couldn't compare the two.
I suppose so.
Plus the ingredients. I mean, like, let's be honest, everything's genetically modified here, and there's no nutritional value in half the food we eat or more. And, you go to places like Italy where they ban GMOs. Like, I remember even ordering omelets for breakfast, and I know that's not a traditional Italian breakfast, but, they put, like, onion in there, and you'd have tears in your eyes because they were so potent. So... it's quite different. So you just couldn't replicate that here. So we're going to have to go over there and experience it firsthand.
I'm in. Let's do it. I would go tomorrow. We've talked about the idea of being an empath. First of all, for the other people that might be listening that are also empaths that are having trouble navigating, how do you go about limiting the noise and sort of, keeping the walls up, so to speak, so that you could properly function without taking on, more than you want to take on at any moment in time?
So for me, that was something I struggled with for a number of years. Early on, I would take on a lot more energy and I'd feel it and let it affect me a lot more than it does now. Um, Basically, what I try to do, it's hard to put into words and describe, but from an overall perspective, I would say it's almost like putting up a shield. So, like, I almost envision that I'm putting a shield around myself and I'm trying to block the energy that, if it's negativity or whatever is coming through. I try to say, all right, well, that's not emanating from me. I know that. So, what can I do to protect myself? And it's like I try to almost envision that there's a shield around me. And, as weird and as kind of ridiculous as this may sound, is I almost kind of invite deity, by invoking Saint Michael, Jesus, and God, and just saying, protect me, and just kind of create that protective layer around myself. At this point, I don't have to necessarily do that unless I'm dealing with some really negative entities. Like when we do some of the paranormal investigations, if there's demons or other very negative entities, that's the only time I really need to pull out that kind of level of protection nowadays. But that was something that certainly helped me. And, a lot of times I would actually do like kind of a breathing exercise. Like, I'll give you a good example. I used to commute on the bus to New York all the time. And, a lot of times I would feel like there was anxiety and there was this like loathing sensation that I would start feeling. I'd be looking around and it's like, I know that's not coming from me. And it's just, to me, being cognizant and understanding, okay, it's not me, it's coming from somebody else. What can I do to mitigate that and push it away? That's really, I think being mindful and cognizant of it is really the first step. So as soon as you realize that it's not coming from you, it's coming from somebody else, you then start to kind of manage that and you compartmentalize, and you can block that out. And I'm sure everybody has their own ways of doing things and their own modalities, but I find that that's really important because if you're not mindful of it, it could consume you. And obviously, if you're in a large crowd or whatever else, it could overwhelm you pretty easily if you don't, practice that mindfulness.
Speaking of overwhelmed, there's many ways to do that, I suppose. I don't know if you remember when we went to that cemetery in Morristown and we walked around and the energy was just quite potent around there, as I recall. There's some interesting gravestones and mausoleums and stuff around there. Pretty cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's actually the fun part. If you're an empath and you have the ability to do that, I would say go drive through a cemetery or take a walk in a cemetery. A lot of times it actually has a very calming effect, but you'll find that occasional spirit that's trying to harass you or provoke you or whatever else, maybe grope you if you're, attracted to them or something. But, as ridiculous as that might sound, it happens. And, from that perspective, that could actually help you and teach you to kind of mitigate those feelings and start to understand in no way, shape, or form, do you want to dabble with anything? Stay away from Ouija boards and things of that nature. You definitely don't want to get into that kind of realm if you're not experienced with it and don't know how to protect yourself. Because I think that's what people don't realize is when they see things like The Exorcist or whatever else, it's like, listen, an entity can't consume you unless you allow it to. And I think that's the important thing that people need to understand. And, when you're in a dark place and you're feeling down or whatever else, it's pretty easy to just kind of let yourself go. I know there's also theories that when people are doing, certain types of drugs, it might actually allow, negative entities to consume them. So
Is that right?
mindful of that. Yeah, there's definitely some theories out there that happens. And, even one of the paranormal investigations I recently did, that
Tell us
person
about that.
had, well, I'm not going to name names or call out anybody, but that individual dabbled with some synthetic type things, and also some pretty heavy drugs, and they essentially somehow brought home a gin in the process. I think there was some extracurricular activities outside of the drug use there, but with that being said, they basically brought this negative entity home. Turned out to be a gin, and there was also a dream catcher in the house that was essentially a portal for this gin to bring in all kinds of negative entities and all kinds of friends, so to speak. And we went there. I went with one of our mutual friends who's a psychic medium. And, we were able to actually clear the entity out of the house. We brought peace and serenity to it. And since then, it's been 100% crystal clear and clean. So, it's
Fantastic. Yeah, and like I said, we don't need to go into any further details on that, but in terms of any of that stuff. But what's a jinn exactly, and what are the different types of? I mean, are there thousands of different types of spirits, or do they sort of break down according to certain categories, so to speak?
So there's definitely different types of entities. I mean, I don't know. I can't say I'm the subject matter expert on all this and can tell you every single entity that exists, but there are certainly different entities out there. There's some that, a jinn is, they claim it's more Middle Eastern and like more of that realm and originating from that area of the world. But, there's like poltergeists. There's obviously, you get into demons, you get into, that type of demonic control. Even with demons, there's all different levels of demons. So, there's, I actually have the book. It's called The Dictionary of Demons, and it kind of lays out the hierarchy and structure of the demonic world, and all these different demon names and when they could come out and when they're most active and things of that nature. Poltergeists and, a lot of times entities are kind of attached to, they might have had some kind of an event that happened there, or it could have been, a house that somebody lived in or whatever else. And sometimes the spirit doesn't realize they died. And oftentimes, there's other times where a spirit's there, but they might not have been a very nice person in life. And, they might not like that there's new people living in their space because they feel like that's theirs. They own it, and they don't want to give that up. So basically, they might haunt people or, harass them or whatever else. And oftentimes they might mess with people if they can. Like, the one thing is, it seems like I think everybody's walked into a space and they felt a bad vibe, right? Like you could always say like, oh, I went into this building and it's like something just felt off. Like everybody's had that experience. And I think with that being said, that's where, even if you're not an empath, you're actually experiencing, that negative entity or that negative energy that's lingering. And, there's all kinds of stuff out there, obviously. And, with us being in this physical world, we don't necessarily know if any of that's legitimate or true, but it seems like something's definitely there, right? And there seems to be a spiritual plane. And I've certainly, I'll give you a great example. Like my cousin went to Dartmouth, and I remember visiting her for the first time when she had first moved up there. So we go up to Dartmouth, and I was in her dorm room, and she told me that there was this girl that lived across the hall from me. And she said every night she felt like somebody was calling her from the cemetery that was straight across from them. And the girl ended up moving because she was being harassed every night. And when I went up there, it actually felt like it was probably like Native American and nature. And, it was pretty interesting because when you walked into this cemetery, it was right across from their dorm. The moment you walked in, it was like 25 degrees colder. Like you could just feel a chill come over you.
Wow.
And everybody could experience that. And it was like, it was what, June or no, actually September, sorry. But, it was definitely weird because it was just like, I'm not saying it wasn't cold yet. It was still like around 80 degrees up there. I remember I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt and it's like, what the heck? It's like, man. And it was just like this one spot. It wasn't like the whole cemetery either. So, it's, we could definitely get into that in further shows. And, I think
I'd like to hear more about it. Honestly,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
To say that where you feel that big a change in temperature and everything else. And there's a lot of ways that could happen. Right. So, we're going to look to have some paranormal experts on the show. At least one or two. Yeah. Obviously, we already had Brian Bowden, who's awesome. And then he's been kind enough to introduce us to some of his friends who we're looking forward to having on the show. So what would you say is the most influential person in your life? Who influenced you to sort of get into the stuff that you're into here?
So nobody actually influenced me to get into this stuff. I would say the most influential person in my life, growing up was obviously my parents, my father especially. He always used to say, practice how you play. Like he coached me in a lot of sports. He was the type of individual and, he loved us to no end and he made a lot of sacrifices for the family. What's interesting with my dad is like he grew up, in the projects in Newark. He was homeless when he was born. And he always valued having money and security and everything else. And I think just from that perspective, like he always just taught you to be a gentleman, to act, like even my mom had a huge influence. Like she always said, make sure you say please and thank you. Be courteous to people. Like when you're addressing somebody's parents, say like Mr. and Mrs., whatever else, always say hello to them when you entered their home. Just like basic things that, I feel like are obviously lost in this world today, it seems like. But
yeah, those basic,
without being, even though they're basic and should be taught to everybody, it doesn't seem to exist. And I think what was really, truly wonderful for me, especially my parents, growing up, it was just, every night for the most part, we had family dinner together. My mom would cook dinner. We'd wait for my father to get home from work. The moment he got home from work, we'd hug him and then we'd go eat dinner together as a family. Like he would go upstairs, change, and literally go and, sit down at the table. And my brother and I would sit there across from one another and my parents. And we just had these wonderful family dinners and, at the holidays and everything. But my father gave us a lot of opportunities. Like I used to spend my summers in Florida. Like we'd leave at the end of June. We'd stay down there till the end of August, and just come back right in time for school. And, I've been to Walt Disney World over 200 times. It's like, like we didn't grow up we're not wealthy by any stretch, but we were definitely not hurting either. And, my father gave us a lot of great life lessons and, he definitely had a much positive and, great influence on me. And, from a perspective of what got me into all this, honestly, growing up, our house was haunted. We lived on an old, listen, I live on Patriots Path, right? It's like Patriots Path is where the Revolutionary War soldiers marched. And Washington came right through here. And the interesting thing is, like, even where my high school was in Bell Labs in Whippany, which, a lot of people, now it's a pharmaceutical company, Bayer, but Bell Labs in Whippany was actually where the first television broadcast ever originated from. And the French camp there during the Revolution. And, it's like people have no idea how much history is actually embedded here. And, I could certainly tell some fun stories about the ghosts we saw with the Revolutionary War soldiers and such. But with that being said, I would constantly see ghosts. I would hear these things that went bump in the night and whatever else. And, you kind of started questioning. It's like, well, wait, it's like, what is this? And what's going on? And, like actually where I live currently used to be woods. Like when I grew up, I used to play in them and, we used to ride our bikes, but it was really interesting because we'd always like lay out, rocks. So we'd find our way back and, sometimes we'd go back and the rocks were moved or they weren't there anymore, even though we were in the same exact spot because we had other markings that would identify that. So, we'd always say, oh, it's haunted here. And it's like, it's weird, but that's
What's
really
your,
what got me into this realm.
That's interesting. Just trying to think. I mean, what did you have any? I mean, I know you said you grew up in let's call it a haunted house or whatever it was, but do you feel like there's been any personal challenges you've had to deal with that have led you to this esoteric way of looking at life and this, insatiable curiosity to know more about the way that we are and what we are and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I think growing up, I always was very inquisitive. I mean, I was the person that always asked a zillion questions, probably to the point where it annoyed the hell out of everybody. I was probably that annoying kid that was just like, hey, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Kind of deal.
What do you mean?
Well, now I'm no longer a child. Well, some would argue I probably still am. I mean, 43 going on 16 probably, or maybe I might be below 10. I'm not sure. But no, I mean, I definitely faced some challenges growing up. I mean, the interesting thing was like, I had a really hard time as a child with like my motor skills. So like, as an example, if I picked up like a pencil, I couldn't write on a sheet of paper like properly. I'd actually put holes in the paper. I'd break the pencil point. Like I didn't know my own strength. And I always struggled with those fine motor skills. And, like initially, even with sports, like the funniest thing is I couldn't like throw a baseball, like, to somebody 5 feet away gently, but I could throw to them like, from the outfield wall to home plate. It's just like, so how come you could do that, but you can't do this? And that was something I had to overcome and a challenge I faced. And, like it was kind of funny because I was always like in school back then, they had like the child study team. So I was like, I was in like this other classroom before school where they were like, oh, well, maybe someday you might be able to, if you're lucky, go to, maybe like a county college or something. And, it just got to the point where it's like, I don't know. I've always been the person like I always feel like I always want to try to get better, and I feel like I'm never complacent. Like it's wrong to be complacent in a sense, and it's like I always try to just continue to seek knowledge, continue to learn, continue to improve myself in any way I can. And I think that stems from childhood because, it's like if you go back and read some of those reports from the child study team, I was like, they probably thought I'd just be, locked in a room somewhere and couldn't do anything for myself. And they were actually amazed at how much I was able to overcome. And they were like, it's actually truly like remarkable, the progress. And, I probably actually could have played professional sports. That's a whole other topic, but, right now I'm not in the shape I want to be in, but I definitely,
round is the shape, my friend. Round is the shape.
This is true, but I'm just saying I probably could have professionally played baseball and soccer and also football. I was actually pretty.
If I look at you, I would say football for sure. I didn't realize you were a good soccer player. You're pretty big.
So baseball was my best sport, but I will say I was a goalie in soccer, and I was basically like back then I used to have a vertical, like I could actually hit my head on the crossbar when I used to jump up. From playing basketball, I guess that probably contributed to it. But, I was definitely, I used to be able to kick a soccer ball about 85 yards.
Wow.
I definitely had some legs on me. And, it's like actually when I played soccer in middle school, I almost scored a couple goals on the opposing goalie from goal kicks and, from just like free kicks. So, it was kind of, it was something I just didn't pursue because I ended up playing football, but I was a kicker in football too. So, in high school, I kicked a 48-yard field goal. I could, actually, my sophomore year of high school, in practice, I could kick about 54 or so yards. Anything beyond that, I kind of struggled with, but I'm sure if I kept to it, I probably could have continued to strengthen my leg.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, baseball was actually my best sport. I was back in the day, I pitched growing up, and then I was mostly first base. So
Wow. Okay.
But
my nephew is now the best guy on his baseball team, and he's
nice.
growing fast to see. But you're also a good golfer, right? You're an avid golfer. A couple of other things. Golfing is something I struggle with.
I mean, I love golf. I honestly haven't played since last year. I just haven't had the opportunity to do so. But, at one point I got down to about an 11-10 handicap range. Probably one of my best rounds I ever played was a Stream Song Blue Course down in Florida. And, I think I shot an 81, and that probably should have been in the 70s. But, that was a cool day because the Detroit Tigers were playing their spring training. They were down there. So they were out on the course throwing us beers and flipping them to us. And Greg McElroy, who was the former quarterback at Alabama, who won the national championship, was there. So one of my buddies actually was a Jets fan at the time because he was on the Jets, and he bought him a beer. It was pretty funny, actually. And then the Tigers were throwing creme brulee at the alligators at the course. We're just like, yeah, don't do that because they're going to have to end up, taking them out because they're going to be attracted to people. But that's a whole other topic. But yeah, golf is certainly a great sport. And it's, I like to say it's 5 hours of laughter too, because we just go out there, smoke cigars, drink bourbon, have a good time. So
that does sound like a good time. Pretty much what we do on the show, except without the golfing.
Yeah. Fortunately.
So you asked me this question, and it kind of threw me for a loop. But what's if you're a spirit guide at a theme song? What would it be?
My spirit guide had a theme song. Oh,
yeah, I know.
It would probably be Angels Amongst Demons. I'd have to link that, because we can't play it. But I think that song has a very impactful, how can I say it? Well, I'll have to find it and put it in the link to this because I think people would want to listen to that. I think, overall, maybe some of the other ones, maybe Kokomo, from the Beach Boys. That's actually that's actually my favorite song. And if you watch any of our family movies, we used to play the Cocktail soundtrack whenever we used to go out on the boat down in Florida. And pretty much in every video, Kokomo's playing. So, yeah, it's
a great. I mean, there's a reason why that thing was such a huge hit. I mean, obviously, it was
absolutely
pretty amazing. So, all right. Well, that's the questions I got. Anything else you want to chat about or talk about that you think I might have left out that you want our listeners to get to know about who Dave Ferrigno is and why he cares about esoteric stuff? Not to mention bourbon.
I think the biggest thing is one of my favorite quotes, that I always like to say is a mind that is stretched by new experience can never go back to its old dimensions. I think it was Oliver Holmes that said that. But that quote always sticks with me because I feel like, especially what we're trying to do on this podcast and platform, is we really want to just get as much knowledge out there as possible. Whether, everything's 100% accurate, obviously, some of our guests have their own perspectives, their own unique experiences, and they're going to just share that with everybody. Now, that's not to say everything's right or wrong, right? But we just really want to get that message out there, and we hope that we make an impact and we make this fun and enjoyable and engaging for everybody. I mean, we're very approachable guys. Like, obviously, if you guys have any questions, if there's any suggestions, if you have any guest suggestions, if anybody wants to be on the show, we'll certainly entertain it. We're really just trying to help as many people as possible. Not to say that we're the experts, foremost experts in everything, but, we're just two regular guys that are trying to produce a lot of content and show you guys what's out there. And, I think the biggest thing is we do have a lot of exposure to esoterics, and, we love talking about it. We love getting into it. Obviously, I don't get to necessarily speak as much on the show as, but again, it's one of those things where it's like we don't want to talk over each other. We also like to have the guest. I'm not knocking you. I just mean in general. It's like, we try to just keep the conversation flowing and keep it fun and enjoyable. So, and hopefully that'll be our legacy one day. And we'd like to get into really helping and coaching everybody and, just see where it goes.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts about where you see this kind of thing going? Obviously the podcast allows us to have a platform to do this kind of stuff. We have a passion for helping people. To some extent, I think you do, and maybe to a little bit more extent, I do, working in the men's space. We're helping younger guys sort of figure themselves out and grow as men. That mentoring aspect, that fraternity aspect kind of thing. I know we both are interested in being coaches to folks that would need it or want it. That sort of experience in terms of what's esoterically possible. But so look forward to that, guys. We'll be delving into more of that as we move forward with the show. And Dave, I want to thank you for being on the show today as a guest. Appreciate it. And that may be the most you'll ever talk on the show, guys. So, just...
And really, I never shut up when I get the opportunity to speak. But no, in all honesty, it's one of those things where, like, obviously, we're just trying to drive the conversation. We're trying to ask the questions. And a lot of the shows, I might have 20, 30 questions jotted down. Same with Alex. And it's just difficult in a 2-hour time frame to get to all those questions. And, sometimes the guests will be talking about a topic where it's just like, listen, I'm not going to drag them off of this because it's truly interesting. So, it's
absolutely
how the conversation goes sometimes. And I'm sure in the future, this is a journey that we're both on. Alex has had acting experience and been in front of the camera. I feel like I'm a babbling idiot half the time when I'm on camera because it's definitely different being in front of the camera and being recorded. Trying not to curse, trying not to say things that are stupid. It's like, and things that are going to get us banned from the internet, as an example. Trust me, there's plenty of stuff we'd love to talk about. And hopefully in the future, we'd start traveling, going to some conventions. Maybe we could actually have those conversations offline and really delve in and meet listeners and get into, a lot of different fun topics. And, I think at some point we'd love to travel the world. We definitely, and we're not really sure how we're going to do this yet on this platform, but we're talking about doing a CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, just doing a recording on that front. We're also going to go and actually explore Bigfoot, Big Feet. It's Brian Bowden invited us to go up there to do. He claims that there's a place that he knows, and maybe they're swimming underneath the whatever body of water to get to the Loch Ness Monster or whatever else. But
Do you think they're using those same tunnels the Loch Ness Monster does this summer over in Canada?
I guess so. I mean, they're probably
Fuck it, Brian. Still not buying it. Maybe still not buying.
maybe they're. I think they're doing somersaults and cartwheels and just having a grand old time up there while they're mimicking and mocking society.
A lot of rock knocks and all kinds of other stuff that they got going on there.
Exactly.
Thanks again for being on the show, and we'll look to wrap up for today. So until next time, this is Brothers of the Arcana. I am Alex Aldea.
I am Dave Ferrigno. God bless. Thank you for listening.
See you guys later.
Ciao, ciao.